Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 180 of Real Blend, a podcast that hopes the Jungle Cruise sequel is titled Jungle Twos. That's right, baby! The puns are back!
The puns are back, baby!
We're bringing puns back. And so, Kev, on that note, Kev, did you know, do you know Uncle Buck's favorite horror franchise? There's a character named Uncle Buck from a movie back in the day. Do you know his favorite horror franchise?
You're pissing off my dog.
Well, first of all, Uncle Buck is one of my favorite comedies of all time. John
I love
Candy.
that you explained that there's a character named Uncle. What's the name of the movie, Sean?
Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck.
By the way,
sometimes people haven't seen the movie, so
when he pulls out the electric screwdriver and he goes into the room, it's such an iconic scene. His favorite car.
No, horror franchise. Uncle Buck's favorite horror franchise.
John Candyman.
Yes!
There we go.
There it is!
Perfect. All right, we're warming up.
The disdain.
I'm glad Jake got that one because that means Jake's all in now.
Part of the puns.
Let's get our minds going.
All right, on this week's
show.
It's
like in Beautiful Mind where he starts like unraveling everything. Like I find like I'm starting to see the puzzles that you guys like everything's playing out in front of me now.
I stepped on my own Jungle Twos joke, by the way, too. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's see. So I saw a bunch of stuff at CinemaCon, which I'm going to be talking about with the boys. Shang-Chi is testing the box office this weekend after Candyman did fairly well. I want to see how the Marvel fans turn out for a new origin story. And hashtag, if it happens, we're going to have an interview with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings director, Destin Daniel Cretton. I'll explain what that means when we get closer to it. Let's introduce the boys, starting with Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jakey. How are you?
Dude, I love that shirt. If you're watching us on YouTube, you got me so jacked for this book that's coming in a little over a year.
Yes. Well, November 1st. November 1st, 2022 is the tentative release date of With Great Power. And so
baby.
I feel an enormous amount of pressure now, now that it's real and that the manuscript is due in January. So expect a lot of nervousness from me. In the other chair, Kevin McCarthy, Fox 5, Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev. How are you?
Sean, Gabriel, Jacob, good to see you all as always. I always do one shortened name and two full names. So, Sean, you get the short one today.
One of my favorite parts of the show is you introducing yourself to all of us, or welcoming us to the show. And of course, Gabe Kobach sitting in the producer's chair. Hi, Gabe. How are you?
How you guys doing, boys?
Housekeeping.
Oh, by the way.
Yes.
Very happy to say that I have successfully used WD-40 and my new chair, which also was creaking the exact same way as so I spent so much time. I ordered one of these chairs on Amazon Basics, and it was like $80. I'm going to put together this nice chair. I put it together. The first 5 minutes I'm sitting in it, all the crackling and the creaking and the nasty sounds are still there. So I have successfully gotten my WD-40 all intact, and I can't hear a single thing. Let's keep it going.
Kevin's not telling you is that he's just standing.
This is true. It's like a workout pose. I'm like fake standing.
Or he's on one of those yoga balls.
Right. No, but this has been like a major thing in the back of my mind for the past couple weeks now. Is like because Gabe was like, you got to get that fixed, and then the new chair was broken too. So now we're good. No more sound effects, except if I do pass gas. I apologize.
Well, if you're listening to us where you get your podcast needs met. First off, thank you. And Kevin's making it as user-friendly as possible. Right. You can also watch us. You can watch us on the YouTube channel, which is, youtube.com/RealBlendPodcast. Give us a follow. Give us a subscribe. Give Jake's Takes a follow, because he's now over 100,000 with his silver icon.
I don't need your pity follows anymore. I'm good.
Oh, wow. So everybody unfollow Jake
no!
immediately. Did they take it away?
I don't know. Are they going to come knock on my door because they shipped it? It's on the way. Give us the button back.
They just hold their hand out. Please, give it back. And, of course, the premium, cinemablend.com, cinemablend.com/RealBlend Premium. If you want a ad-free version of the show, 2 newsletters a month, and a free episode every Monday. We will have already done, by the time you guys listen to this, our Raiders of the Lost Ark watch party. So go back to our Twitter feeds and read our reactions. But we're going to be doing other ones, Gabe. That's what I was getting to. We're going to be doing the other Indiana Jones films and potentially even some more films down the line. So
I'm really excited. I'm very excited for tonight.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I haven't watched Raiders from start to finish in a really long time. So that's gonna be a good.
For me, it's been like 4 months.
Good incentive to go see it. Okay, weekly poll. So we're gonna be getting into CinemaCon after our interview this week. But before we get to the interview, I want to talk about the weekly poll where we asked people what has you the most hyped coming out of CinemaCon. Kevin, I'm going to give you the 4 options that we gave to the people. First, I want you to guess what the people said, and then I want you to tell me what you think of these 4 projects that were teased at CinemaCon. So CinemaCon is a convention that takes place in Las Vegas every single year. It is put on by the theater owners, and it's a way to hype people up for here's everything that's coming to your movie theaters, and hopefully, bringing in a lot of money for the exhibitors. We put down as choices Matrix 4, Jurassic World, what's the new one called? Dominion? Jurassic World Dominion.
It's a good start.
Tom Cruise flying planes, or Tom Cruise jumping motorcycles. Those are the 4 options. What do you think the people picked?
Based on how many views Sean's YouTube reaction got for The Matrix, I am going to go with The Matrix just based on pure anticipation, even though the Tom Cruise stuff was talked about heavily. We'll get into that once we get into that after the interview.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just go purely based on your video was Matrix 4. Now, personally, out of the 4, I'm probably Tom Cruise Mission Impossible. But one or the other, either one of those sounds exciting to me. So.
You're correct that the audience absolutely went all in on Matrix 4. 45.7%.
Is that surprising to you guys?
It is a little bit.
Kind of is.
I'm a little surprised by that. We're all jacked about Matrix 4, and that's not to say we're not, but I feel like I didn't really hear that many people talking about Matrix before CinemaCon, or maybe
I think it's because it's an actual thing now. Like there's footage, it exists. Like,
as a title.
I think Matrix 4 has kind of been like
this
is this really kind of happening? Yeah. But yeah.
All right, we're going to talk about CinemaCon on the other side of the interview. So let's get to this week's conversation, the official Real Blend conversation. This is kind of a hashtag if it happens, if only because we are recording the podcast on Monday, and we are due to get Destin Daniel Cretton, the director of Shang-Chi, on Tuesday. So, things tend to happen, and they fall through. So I think you're going to throw you to a Destin Daniel Cretton interview right now, but if not, we're going to plug in Elijah Wood, who joined the show to talk about his new film, No Man of God. No Man of God. Thank you very much.
Directed by Real Blend guest Amber Seeley.
Yes, who's a terrific guest. And if
just to clarify, people don't pay for this podcast, right?
Yeah. What?
This is the free one.
This is the free one.
And it's also crazy that we can say we're in a position to go, all right, if this guest doesn't work out, we have Lord of the Rings star Elijah Wood. We have Lord of the Rings star Elijah Wood as our backup.
Yes, highly unusual.
He should be our backup every week.
Hey, that would be great. He's just in the wings. I will point out that
the trees.
We're expecting Destin's interview to go well, and that's what we're going to throw to. So if we do, Elijah will still be dropping this week on Friday. You can get it wherever you get this podcast. So both of them will be dropping this week, hopefully.
Yes. And Elijah's a really cool interview. We dive into his whole career from Lord of the Rings and Good Son and everything. Back to the Future Part 2, even though he's a very small role in that. So if you're hearing this and you're not going to hear it in this episode, please seek it out as a bonus. It's really cool.
Either Lord of the Rings or Legend of the Ten Rings. Let's find out how it happens. We are enormous fans of this movie. I want to start here, though, because I think a hero's on-screen costume is so important, and you got to work with someone who I think is incredibly brilliant, and it's Kim Barrett. She created one of my favorite Spider-Man costumes of all time for Andrew Garfield. I'd love to know what kind of conversations you two had when coming up with Shang-Chi's on-screen costume.
Kim is a very special designer. She always starts from a place of theme and meaning, and she really does have a purpose for every line in a uniform or a costume. And for this, it's hard not to also mention Andy Park, who worked really closely with Kim on all of the key designs of the costumes in this movie. And together a big part of Shang-Chi's outfit is this infinite knot that is the design on the chest that that has a lot of hidden meaning behind it that I won't really get into. But there's a lot to unravel connected to that costume.
You know, Destin, the bus fight is one of the most incredible fights I've seen in a film in a long time. And the beauty of that scene, as I told you at the television junket, was the idea that you can actually see the action. You can see the choreography. And obviously Bill Pope's brilliant and Brad Allen, everything that was kind of put into that scene is incredible. I was wondering if you can just walk me through kind of what that scene looked like to shoot in terms of like, were the walls from the bus removable, how you were getting those camera angles, and kind of the importance of actually having a fight in camera without a ton of edits that we can actually see Simu doing the fights. Can you talk about the importance of that and kind of how you pulled that scene off?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first big fight of the movie. It's the first time that we see Shang-Chi fight, and we knew it was we wanted people to know what they're getting into through the course of that fight. It was the first fight sequence that we actually shot in the movie as well. And we had shipped over two of those accordion buses from San Francisco out to Sydney, and had them up on these mechanical gurneys that would allow them to, I mean, the actors had to like get sent up to the bus because it was like 20 feet in the air so that it could go 45-degree angles and twist and shake and turn. And I mean, I felt for them because it wasn't just the actors, but it was, you know, the background actors who were all a part of the entire scene. And I went up in that thing for about 2 minutes and I thought I was going to throw up. Because we shot in that scene. That scene took about a month to shoot, so it was a lot.
And Florian said it was summertime in Australia too, wasn't it? Brutally hot.
Yeah, it was pretty hot. But it was also my introduction to action filmmaking. That was the first action sequence I'd ever shot in my life.
Wow. So
it was a really fun process to be a part of. And I learned a ton from Brad Allen and his team who work very closely. I don't know if you ever watched any behind the scenes footage with Jackie Chan and how he choreographs his fights, but it is very sequentially. And I remember watching this footage of Jackie Chan walking through the choreo of a fight sequence, and he would just do it with someone, and then he knew where the cut would be. Cut here, and then he does the next cut here, change the camera angle here. He does the next thing, cut here, and he would just. And when I spoke to Brad Allen about what it was like being trained under Jackie Chan, he said it was always story first, filmmaking first, and then martial arts close second. But that to me was the defining moment of how we were going to be tackling a lot of these sequences in our movie. We didn't want just debris flying around and punches and kicks and just eye candy. We wanted narrative storytelling to be taking us through each of these sequences. So it was important that you saw clearly what these incredible physical feats that were happening in front of us. But it was equally as important to make sure that the narrative was clear to follow through each of the action sequences.
Destin, when someone is elected to a top political office, they're brought in to have intelligence meetings to sort of bring them up to speed on all of the classified information that they need to know moving forward to be able to do their job. And I'm just sort of curious, is there such a thing as like a Marvel intelligence briefing? Like once you get this job, do they bring you in this room and sort of tell you all the secret things you need to be made aware of?
I wonder how much of that is actually true, even if when you become the president? I don't know. Or do you come in and realize everybody is making it up as they go along?
You at least find out about Area 51.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, are there aliens? That's all I would want to be president for. Not to the extent that I think we all imagine. There isn't like this magic Marvel cookbook that opens up before your eyes and that's how they make these movies so great over and over. There is what I found a very clear magic ingredient to why I think Marvel has repeatedly made movies that are so enjoyable, fun, emotional, and continue to surprise us somehow within the context of their genre, of the superhero genre. They're risk takers. And there is a clear environment in that studio of that is not fear-based, that is very explorative, and they want each of their filmmakers to push the boundaries of each movie so that they continue to surprise their fans. But I found that the secret is less a rule book and more a very kind of pretty open and collaborative environment to be creative in.
Well, that's perfect. Sort of building off of that, I'm curious if you had any kind of access to the existing Marvel directors, people like Ryan Coogler, Peyton Reed, even the Russo brothers, people who have been through it before. Were you able to touch base with any of them beforehand and maybe pick their brains about how they got through it?
Yes, I did. I got to meet the Russo brothers briefly when we were down in when we were down at Comic-Con, and they gave me a bit of very simple sound advice, which was just don't move on until you know you got it. And if you have to reschedule it the next day, reschedule it and just make sure you get it. I have been friends with Ryan Coogler for a while, so I was able to talk to him before I even came on to the project. I also happened to meet Taika at a bar right around the corner from Marvel. It was the day after I got hired, and so he gave me a great download and a little pep talk. And so it's a really pretty cool community to be ushered into, and everyone's very supportive.
You know, Destin, one of the things I find interesting is earlier you said it was your first action scene you ever shot. And one of the beauties of what Shang-Chi does for me as an audience member is I care about the action because the drama is so great. It actually enhances the action. The fight scenes are even better because I care about the story and I care about the narrative. And you come from such a great dramatic background. I was curious, looking back at something like Short Term 12, for example, and then looking at this, while they're wildly different films, they're both still great dramas. They both still have an emotional core to them. And I'm just wondering if you pulled anything from experience like that, even though it's a smaller film, that you could still use on a movie like this, even though it's so large. Because your voice, I hear your voice as I'm watching this movie in terms of you as a storyteller. It doesn't feel like a gigantic CGI action film. It feels like I'm hearing a story being told by you as a storyteller. So I wanted to ask you about what those experiences like were on those smaller films that you could still use narratively here.
I mean, I use everything from my smaller films. I think drama is drama, regardless of how big your budget is and how much action there is in between. I also think that there is a clear tone that we are trying to capture of authenticity, whether that is the comedy or the drama that's mixed into this movie. We wanted to have characters that just felt real, that felt like my friends, that felt like your friends, that feel like people that we know and we can connect to. And to me, I don't know, the muscles that I used in order to gain that type of authenticity and performances is there's no difference. I guess the main difference is it's a giant set, so to find the intimacy requires a bit more focus and trying to forget all the green screens and the 1,000 people who are sitting around waiting for you to finish your dramatic moment. But it was, I think, coming up, when we shot short term, you don't have action sequences or CGI to distract people or to excite people. So those sequences are replaced by emotion or a simple push in on an actor, and you hope that the actor's performance is the thing that will be the entertainment and the draw. In this movie, it was actually really fun to be able to try to weave the two together, and that was something that was surprising, was how much the action and the adrenaline you get from watching an action sequence, how much that can actually contribute to the drama that is following, and vice versa, how much a dramatic sequence can emotionally charge an action sequence that follows it.
Yeah.
Destin, speaking of Brie Larson, about 2 years before she had Captain Marvel come out, you and her had a film, Glass Castle, hit theaters, and I was wondering if there was any overlap in terms of the timing of her starting to talk to Marvel while also filming your film. Like, did she mention hey, I got Marvel on the phone and they're talking to me about this Captain Marvel thing? Had you started hearing things about that while you were working with her?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about it because her security started to beef up on our movie, and we started to, there were paparazzi who were aiming their cameras off of buildings around where we were shooting, and then it became much more official when the Marvel private jet showed up to pick her up and fly her down to Comic-Con for a day and then fly her back onto set. So it was very exciting to see.
The Marvel, have you been on the Marvel private jet yet?
I mean, I'm not, there's not really a Marvel private jet. There's there's a number of Disney private jets.
I just picture a big red jet that just says Marvel on the side.
This man is on a global tour. He's been on a million jets at this point now. Destin, there's a scene early in the film that's sort of played for laughs, and it involves Funyuns, and I'll let the people discover what it is. But it has to do with this idea of letting go and moving on. And it's almost dismissed somewhat early, but that theme ends up becoming really crucial to Wenwu's journey in ways that I don't necessarily want to spoil. I'll let people discover, but I want you to be able to talk about the push and pull of that theme in Shang-Chi. You clearly set it up, and it has a huge payoff at the end.
Yes, thank you for noticing. That is to me the beating heart of this story is how do we individually learn to deal with pain and loss, and how do we collectively as a family learn to deal with pain and loss. And what I find inspiring in my life is when I come across human beings who are not only able to push through their pain, but who are able to transform it into an actual strength or a superpower, to where these things that once held us down, our insecurities, our moments where we have been bullied or we've lost someone that we love, that through the process of owning up to that and learning to deal with it, it becomes a superpower that we can now use to inspire others, to help bring others through their pain. And so that was a theme that I was very excited to explore in the context of the superhero genre.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, a lot of those dramatic themes in the film were incredible. Like, my favorite scene in the movie is when Tony asks Awkwafina's character what her Chinese name is, and that kind of what that brings up in terms of family and embracing who you are. I'm really fascinated by your use of aspect ratios in your career. I've asked this question before to filmmakers because I find this interesting in terms of what an aspect ratio does for their storytelling. I mean, you look at Short Term 12, you're shot in 1.85. I think Just Mercy was 1.85, Glass Castle was 2.35, and you're 2.39 here, I believe. And I'm just wondering what those aspect ratios mean to you as a storyteller. Like, why would Short Term 12 be a 1.85 ratio and then Shang-Chi is 2.39? Like, what does that mean to you in terms of the story you're telling?
I mean, we always try to figure out like what's the best aspect ratio for it. A lot of it is location. A lot of it is the theme of the movie and what we want people to feel. Sometimes in Short Term 12, we wanted people to feel claustrophobic, to feel what it was like to be in that facility 24/7. In this movie, we were definitely inspired by some of the classic Asian cinema that came before us that worked its way into this decision. It was also between Bill Pope and Brad Allen and his team, like what's the best aspect ratio to capture the movement of these stunt performers and the choreography. And this was the aspect ratio we fell on that felt like it would capture it the best. The cool thing about this movie is you can watch it in two different aspect ratios if you go to an IMAX theater.
Oh, that's right. The 190, right? You get the 190 and yeah.
Which I'm very excited about because it wasn't just like and we'll also release it this way. It is a very different experience that we also put a lot of thought into because we knew we were going to release it in both ways. Oh. So as we were shooting, we knew, we had both aspect ratios on the monitor and we knew what we were capturing.
Wow.
And I've seen it.
That's crazy. That's great.
Yeah. So if you watch it in IMAX, you definitely get
more of the image.
You get more of the image. And the compositions are different. I find some things in the IMAX to be much more interesting. But they're different. They're just two different experiences, which is fun.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. That's gotta be impossible to think about, like knowing what frame you're in. Like this is because the main aspect ratio and then the IMAX. I mean, that must have been an insane thing to think about when you're filming. God.
I mean, we always knew that. I mean, our 239 was our aspect ratio, but we were like making sure that our IMAX version was also going to be cool. And it is. It's very cool.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool.
Destin, in addition to getting Avengers movies where entire teams meet up, I feel like lately through Marvel, we've been getting a lot of kind of just like one-on-one pair-ups. Ragnarok brought Thor and the Hulk, and then we're going to get Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in a couple of months. And I was wondering what that means for Shang-Chi moving forward, because it's always one character being featured in another character's franchise. And as he gets more popular, is there any fear on your part of losing him to another franchise? Like if Sam Raimi decides, I want Shang-Chi for Doctor Strange 3, and you go, well, what the hell? Like, he's mine. You can't have him. Like, how does that work? And as a storyteller, does that concern you at all?
No, that doesn't concern me. I don't feel like Shang-Chi is mine. I hope Shang-Chi is embraced by everybody, and I actually think it's extra exciting to see a character like Shang-Chi be embraced by the wider MCU and be able to cross over, and so that this, like, I don't know, this stamp of minority superhero just starts to fade away and he just becomes a superhero. That's the hope.
Yeah.
And I love that he's a package deal, like with Nora. I think that's a really important move moving forward. So
I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for all of these characters. I think I'm very excited to see where they go, who they team up with, and what their future is in the MCU.
Destin, I admire your candid response I got to sit in during the press conference that you did a couple of days ago for domestic press, and you said that right prior to getting Shang-Chi, you had said something to your agent along the lines of like, do not get me a Marvel movie. Like, I do not want a Marvel movie. But, you know, there are several filmmakers who have delivered origin stories and then stayed on board with their franchise. And so now that you've been through the process, I'm going to put you on the spot. Like, they give you another shot. Are you on board and you're going to do more Shang-Chi, more Marvel films? Yeah,
I would. I mean, when I said that to my agent, it was I mean, it was real. I mean, I was basically just telling my agent, I don't want to do those types of movies. Like, I know that I was getting to the place in my career where it's easy for agents to try to just push me into that direction, but I was not feeling like I wanted to. A part of it was definitely fear of losing creative control, of fear of just losing my mind being on projects that big. I found the experience to be much more exciting, much more fun than I expected. And I also found that it was, I don't know, the process of working on a big movie was more conducive to who I am than I expected. I grew up on an island, so I move at kind of a slower pace than most people. But I also I just love collaboration. I love collaborating with people who are really good at their jobs, and this movie was extremely collaborative, and I had a blast. So I'd definitely do it again.
Awesome. I think we can fit one more in.
Yeah, Destin, I'll end us on this. One of my favorite, so there's a lot of themes in this film that struck me, and the bullying element of it, and that was a really big theme, I thought. But one of the things I thought was interesting was the adulthood idea, and the idea of Awkwafina's character and Simu's character kind of running from adulthood, and then essentially being made to grow up very quickly and become adults, and in this story specifically. So I was wondering for you, is there a moment in your life, maybe it was as a filmmaker or just as a person in general, where you felt like you had to grow up faster than you were ready for, and it could be something to do with maybe making a movie of yours. Just curious if you felt like that switch and you kind of had to grow up really quickly.
Yes, I think we all have many moments when we feel that urge to like, oh, I need to get my act together. 3 years ago, I had my first son, my first child, and that was right around the time we were shooting Just Mercy. And so it was instant for me. As soon as I knew that I was having a kid, my entire worldview just shifted to how do I create a world that will be the best place for this child. And that theme is definitely something that I've always kind of thought about, but it just became much more in focus. And while I was shooting this movie, 2 months in, I had my second child.
Congratulations!
Yeah, 2 months into production, we had to. I was shooting the next morning, and I had to rush my wife to the hospital. And we had our child in the middle of the night. What scene
will always be associated with the birth of your child?
Yeah, the next day.
It was actually like they were shooting the scene where Shang-Chi is home at his dad's compound, and he goes up to that post. We see it a lot, and he sees like the So the indentation from his childhood hits, and then he sits down and has like a memory of his mom, and that was a scene that I actually directed from my iPhone in the hospital.
That's awesome. What aspect ratio was your iPhone in when you were directing it?
They had to turn it. They had to turn it to the monitor.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Great
What
story.
a great story.
Destin,
awesome.
we are running out of time. We can obviously talk to you forever. We know you're on this global tour and talking to everybody, so we really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. You guys have a great vibe. Good triptych.
Hey, that's awesome.
We'll
Appreciate
take it.
Well,
Come
hey, thank
back
you
on
very
our
much.
show anytime, man. We'll see you on
anytime.
we'll see you for the next one, okay?
Cool. Sounds good.
Thank you very much to Disney for giving us time with Destin Daniel Cretton. We're going to review Shang-Chi later on in the show. All right, let's get to talking points, which this week is CinemaCon. And so, you guys tell me what you want to hear about, because I jotted down a bunch of titles that I thought were big. And I'll mention them each, and then you guys can kind of ask me what you want to know about them. Kev, you had a question already?
Well, I want to say thank you for all your coverage, because it was for me, as someone who wasn't there, like you and a bunch of other of our colleagues, I'll shout out some other people as well, Brandon Davis, everyone, you guys did everyone did great coverage, but Sean's
Tara
tweets
Hitchcock,
about
Tara Hitchcock did great stuff.
Tara
Listener of the
Hitchcock.
show.
Tara always does a great job.
But I wasn't there, and I've never been to CinemaCon, and CinemaCon's a place that I feel like I belong. I would love to go to CinemaCon one day, just because I love the celebration of movie theaters and just the hype that surrounds finally seeing the footage. And Sean's coverage was the way he tweeted about it was probably the way I would have reacted to that footage. I felt like I was physically there watching it with you, because I'm that's how I probably would have been freaking out. I would have been this is incredible. Oh my God, they showed this featurette. Because the CinemaCon really is all about the celebration of why the cinema experience is so special and makes these films so special. And you even had an experience we'll get to later in the show today, where you saw a film in a better theater while you were there, and it actually enhanced your score by a point. So I just think the immersion that's displayed at CinemaCon is really important in terms of how these films are watched and viewed. So thank you for what you did. It was really cool to read it.
Thank you. But I will point out the fact that this was a very unusual CinemaCon, because the industry, as high and mighty as they want to be, or as bullish as they want to be about where things are going to be in the next few weeks, next few months, there was still this air of we're not 100%
David Ayer?
That's my question, though. What I want to ask, because whenever I think of something like Comic-Con or like a Star Wars celebration, I think of a group of fans brought together, a generally very positive attitude, saying, "Please give me what you've got." I know a lot of you guys got to go out there to cover it, and obviously a lot of you guys are fans, but a majority of the people out there are involved in the theater industry.
Sure.
I'm curious as to how that changes the mood inside the room. Is it less of a please give us what you got, and more of a hey, what do you got? Impress me? Is it less, I don't want to say less fandom, but is it how does the mood differ from something else you've been to, like a Comic-Con or a Star Wars celebration?
It's way more muted than a Comic-Con.
I was going to ask you, do people applaud after footage, or what's the vibe in there?
Yes, they do. But it's also very easy to play to that crowd, to come out on stage and make really boisterous statements against day and date streaming, or to talk about the exclusivity of the theater going experience, or the length of the window. These are all phrases that we've used often.
What was the mood for the Warner Brothers panel?
Hostile.
Was it?
Yeah, hostile.
Because of HBO,
But they
HBO
have
Max.
Warner Brothers have given theaters more movies than any other studio?
It's a very unusual split, because that is true. Every Warner Brothers movie that they have released, they've basically maintained their entire normal 2020 calendar, with the caveat that the things that they put into theaters also went onto home video. Now, you got to remember, not everybody has HBO Max. We do make a big deal about the fact that something like Suicide Squad or potentially Dune is going to be available on HBO Max, and that it's a play to get those subscribers to go over to that service. But not everybody has it.
Isn't it
for
only
sure.
like the third or fourth most popular streaming service? I think Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus,
It's not
Amazon
that everyone
are all ahead of it.
It's not that everyone has it. And I urge everyone to do this, to read this if you have a chance. Sean sent me a really great article that Denis Villeneuve wrote about Dune. It was back in 2020 when the HBO Max deal was like announced that they were going to be doing the day and date for 2021. And I think what he says in there is so powerful about the idea of a film like this particularly, which is very, very reliant on what it does financially in terms of what we're, again, we all can sit here right now and say we're definitely going to see part 2, but we're living in a very unpredictable world, and you want a film like that to deliver. So it's not necessarily that not everybody has HBO Max. It's the fact that a film like that could be ruined by HBO Max. And I say that, I don't say that like that extreme, but I mean it in the sense that, like, if you take away X amount of millions of dollars from that box office because people watch it on HBO Max, will that eventually hurt a potential, and think about it, Denis' future as a filmmaker. These massive films he's making, Blade Runner 2049 didn't do what it needed to do to be considered a success from a financial perspective.
Hold on, but here's two things that came out of CinemaCon. One, the idea of what is a success now is totally different.
True.
Paramount was over the moon that Quiet Place 2 has made $300 million globally.
But that was a theatrical only for the first 3 or 4 weeks.
But 2 years ago, $300 million globally wasn't even going to move the needle.
Well,
that's not a success.
Wait, what did the first Quiet Place do? I don't think it did that much more than that.
And also, the other takeaway while you're looking that up is that what a film's box office is no longer just the barometer of success.
All right, so Quiet Place Part 1 did 340 without a pandemic.
Okay, 300 is pretty good.
That's actually a really good, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So prior to pandemic, Quiet Place does 340.
Yeah.
During a pandemic, theatrical only, 300 million.
Sure. But they don't want to see a sequel going in the opposite direction. But
true,
knowing that they were caveats, 100%. Yeah. For the reasons why they saw it. So the footage that is shown there is more meant to get theater owners excited to say, here are the things that are coming because these are the things that are going to draw people to your theaters. Like these are the titles that we're bringing in order to get people super excited. But what was weird, because you asked about the Warner Brothers panel, so many of the studios that went, normally in a given year, they will roll out what their movies are going to be, and they'll have the cast come out, and it's nothing but an assembly line of talent that is coming across the stage. Right? Yes, and coming across and saying, this is why we are excited about this movie that we have made for you. And then they do a lot of press, and none of that happened. Like none of that. At best, you got a studio head, some executive at the upper level. And the Warner Brothers one, when I tell you why it was aggressive, is because they sent nobody at all. They recorded their message and played it on screen. And their message was very much along the lines of, hey, we've always been there for you guys. We're the biggest proponents of the theater going experience. And people were laughing. Like, people in the audience were visibly laughing at their statement. But then they said, and they were right, hey man, we've rolled 19 movies into theaters this year, and no other studio can say that they've done that. Yeah. And I was like, yes, that's true.
You can't argue with that.
No,
it's a great point.
At the end of the day, Warner Brothers is still releasing theatrically, which is great. Now, in a perfect world, obviously, pandemic, you can't think about it like that. But in a perfect world, they would have given like a 2 or 3 week window, maybe. Sure. Then went to HBO Max. But
instead of everybody else pushing back,
you're right.
Warner Brothers put movies into theaters and gave people the option.
That's not a bad point.
Yeah. So Sony was up first, and they rolled out the entirety of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, I can't talk about it in specific detail, but what would you guys like to know about the new Jason Reitman film?
Why do you think, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that the only big release at CinemaCon that played in full?
Shang-Chi also played in full. Disney played Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi's coming out, though. Like,
Sean's not telling you that he's already seen Dune.
And then Paramount played, I swear, I'm not joking, Clifford the Big Red Dog. They played Clifford in its entirety.
Shang-Chi, I understand, because that comes out this week. I mean, that movie's been done. People have already seen it. There were fan screenings a week before that.
Yes, but Ghostbusters was the only super early screening.
Let me ask you guys normally have a lot of like surprise, we're showing you the whole movie while you're there.
No.
Is that no? That's not a common thing.
Most studios take up the entire panel with presentations of all their movies that are coming. So Sony theoretically would have done a Venom panel. They would have done a Ghostbusters panel and maybe even brought out the original guys. They would have had a No Way from because they played the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. They would have had Tom Holland and Benedict Cumberbatch come out.
Had the trailer already dropped online by the time you guys got it in Vegas? Because wasn't it?
No, they played it first, and then it dropped right after.
So for Ghostbusters, two things about Ghostbusters. One, why, in terms of like the environment that you were in, why do you feel that they showed you the full movie?
Because they're super confident in it. They think it's going to play really big, and they wanted to get some buzz going because they allowed social reaction to it. So they wanted people to say that they saw it and what they thought of it, and they wanted to let theater owners know because this is almost the pre-Thanksgiving holiday. It's like Ghostbusters and Top Gun Maverick are the two movies that are due to hit right before Thanksgiving, and you would assume are going to attract a lot of people to the box office over that Thanksgiving weekend.
Since you can socially react, one thing about Afterlife that makes me excited. I mean, first of all, I love that Ivan Reitman's son. I call him that. We know him as Jason Reitman now, obviously, because he's made so many great movies. Thank You for Smoking and Juno and Up in the Air, and but he's still Ivan Reitman's son. You know, and Ivan Reitman is one of the greatest filmmakers of our time that we grew up with. So the idea of his son taking over the director's chair for a film is pretty special. So I wonder, I don't know if you can answer this, but does it feel like an Ivan Reitman film, or does it feel like a Jason Reitman film? And I say that because I wonder if Jason like allowed his father's style to continue throughout, or does it feel like you're watching like almost a little bit on the, I guess, snarkier side of like the Juno type of comedy and like the Thank You for Smoking. It's a little bit of a different comedy style, I would argue.
That is a terrific question.
Oh, thank you, Sean.
Because it is very much a Jason Reitman film.
Okay, so that's interesting. So that's now. So okay, I know you can't get into anything else, but does that? So it does feel like a different vibe.
Yes, it definitely does. It doesn't have the same vibe as it has. Okay, I can say it this way: it has more of the vibe of the first two movies than the 2016 movie does. It's definitely closer in tone than the 2016 movie is, but it definitely feels like a Jason Reitman film.
So Sean, in the movie, Slimer like flies around, right? Like we get Slimer flying around.
He's called Muncher. It's a different ghost.
Oh, okay. So whenever he's flying around, is he up in the air?
Oh, there we go.
Bang.
There we go.
Don't give me the rap game.
I'm all in.
All right.
Last question on Ghostbusters, real fast.
Yes.
Because I'm interested in knowing this. In terms of like, I don't want to give this away, but we do know the main cast is obviously minus Harold Ramis because he passed away. But like we know they're returning. That's confirmed, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
This is the only thing that really bothers me sometimes with these films that then kind of continue on or get remade or whatever. I know this is a continuation of Ghostbusters, so it takes place in the same world.
Yes.
Does it feel like they naturally fit into the story, or does it feel like they've been thrown in just to be thrown in? Does it actually make sense? Because I didn't mind Paul Feig's movie. I know everyone hated that movie. I kind of liked Paul Feig's film, but I felt like the biggest problem I had with Feig's movie was that when Aykroyd and those characters were mentioned or show up, it felt like it was poorly written, forced, and didn't make sense.
Like
to the story.
shoehorned in.
Right?
Yeah.
How does this feel?
It is again better in that aspect than 2016. They are worked into the story as their characters. But in my opinion, and this is the most I can say, it didn't do as good of a job as I wanted it to. With the main guys. Main guys.
All right, that's
I'll
where
elaborate more. Yeah. All right. I want to talk about No Time to Die briefly because it's a movie that's been around for a super long time. And they showed footage that we've seen a lot of hints at, which is the bridge scene with Daniel Craig laying down behind the brick and the car goes over him and then he's cornered by the two guys.
I still like move whenever I see that clip.
Yes.
Is that the new Tom Cruise Mission Impossible 3 bridge missile shot? When he's running across and then the missile flies against the car.
Shot.
Maybe.
Oh, Abrams, baby.
But it goes to him diving off of the bridge, holding onto the rope. and then it goes into him fighting against a guy that's on a motorcycle. Then he takes that motorcycle and jumps up the stairs, and all these bits that are in the trailer get mixed into the longer sequence. And it really feels to me that Daniel Craig's Great Bond, Bad Bond, Great Bond, Bad Bond is lining up to become a terrific James Bond film for No Time to Die. And, you know, it's Craig's last one. I think this is pretty much the opening of the film, or relatively close to it. It definitely started in the middle of a sequence, and then kept going all the way through until what looked like more of an action sequence. But goddamn, it just looks like Craig is firing on all cylinders. And I think Cary Fukunaga is a terrific choice.
Is it weird that I'm excited about this film primarily because of Fukunaga? Because like Listen, I love Casino Royale, and Skyfall is you could argue Skyfall is the greatest Bond movie ever made. You could argue that. And I'm sure people would probably disagree with that. But I was rewatching, my brother-in-law is a massive Bond fan, and I watched From Russia with Love and Goldfinger a couple weeks ago at home. And it's truly astounding how well those movies were made for the time in terms of like just visual effects, but also getting so much of it in camera. And the Fukunaga footage that I've seen, at least in the trailers, seems to be very immersive in that sense. Did you get a sense that you were watching a lot of practical effects?
Dude, I look like Daniel Craig was going to die in multiple sequences. Yes.
Sick.
Yes,
sick. I can't wait.
He is putting his life on the line. It does
he
not
do a
look
True
like
Detective 6-minute oneer at one point?
No, he does not do
like
that.
You don't see
not
Matthew
as far as I
McConaughey
know.
running through a car or something like that in 6 minutes and climbing a fence.
No, but you know, in the older Connery Bond films, it would be a fight sequence, and you'd see a much younger stunt double in there fighting. Like you don't see that with Craig at all.
I will say a testament to those older films, though, and maybe it's just because of how great the performers were. I actually didn't notice stunt doubles in From Russia with Love. And I was just like, and I was paying attention to it pretty closely, but like, they do a good job blocking that out back in the day. And like Connery
might have done a lot of his own stuff.
Connery was pretty,
that surprised.
He was so tall, by the way. I forgot how tall Connery was. Was he like 6'4" or something?
Oh, wow.
He was
I have
insane.
no idea.
Anyway,
Sean, I have a question about a movie you saw a preview for that isn't necessarily one of the big titles that came out of CinemaCon, but it's a title that very much excites me. And I say that now realizing I don't know what the title is. It's the next Scott Derrickson, Ethan Hawke horror film.
It's called The Black Phone.
The Black Phone. And obviously the last collaboration we got between them two was Sinister, which I think is one of the scariest movies ever made.
Right.
They did a scientific poll recently that they figured out scientifically it's the scariest movie ever made. And
I actually don't disagree with that.
They hooked up like measurements to people and did a thing, and it was like scientifically, I think it was like that was number one, Exorcist was number two. But
That's
I was wondering if
insane.
you could just give me a little preview of that, because I'm always down for a good horror movie.
It's these two collaborating again, Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill, who they both worked together on
Great writer.
Doctor Strange also. They've been longtime collaborators. So the idea behind this is that Ethan Hawke, who came out beforehand, Universal did a really great thing in terms of their panel, whereas they got, since talent didn't come, they instead had actors come out and who were involved with whatever project they were plugging. They had Matthew McConaughey talking about a movie. I forgot which one he threw it to. They had Ethan Hawke come out, and they talked about the movie that they had coming, and then they would talk about the movie theater in their hometown that they loved going to see something at. And then they threw it to the manager of that
that's
theater.
Cool.
And then the manager would talk a little bit about their theater, and then they would say, and now here's the new footage from.
That's so cool.
Jamie Lee Curtis did Halloween Kills, and she had a theater that she frequents in like Utah or wherever she escapes to. And she's like, I know this old guy. He's been there for 30 years. And they throw it to him, and he goes, look, I saw the first Halloween, and it scared me so bad that I haven't watched any of the others, like any of them at all. So he goes, Jamie Lee Curtis has Halloween Kills coming later this year, and I'm not going to see it, but here's the footage from the new movie coming out. And it was adorable. So Ethan Hawke comes out, and he sets up The Black Phone, and he says exactly what you were saying, is that Scott Derrickson and I consider Sinister to be the scariest movie that either of us have worked on. Jason Blum, who's producing it, it's a Blumhouse film. Blum considers it to be the scariest movie that they've ever worked on. And here's their follow-up, essentially. And so Ethan Hawke is playing a child abductor, and he dresses up as a hobo clown almost. It's a terrifying look. It is a terrifying look. Not like a Pennywise thing. It's not like over the top. It's more very subdued. And he kind of lures...
like a John Wayne Gacy, not even like a party clown.
No. More just like a Depression era.
Wow.
Clown who like lures kids in with like, hey, do you want to see a trick? And it's like it's a very charismatic performance, but like in a terrifying way.
Wow.
So he lures kids in. So there's been a streak of kids that are missing from the neighborhood. He snatches this one boy, and puts him into a basement that has nothing else in it except for this black phone on the wall. And Ethan Hawke is saying something along the lines of, that phone hasn't worked in decades. I can't think of the last time that it worked. And in the meantime, the girl who is best friends with the boy who got snatched, she's running around telling people that like she had a dream about him of where he's going to be. And she's trying to get people to believe that she's seen a dream of where he is. And is having a hard time convincing adults that her dream makes sense. But everything that she did dream is happening to this kid. So he's in the basement for an extended amount of time. And then after a while, the phone on the wall starts to ring. And he ignores it at first. And then it rings once, it stops. It rings once, it stops. And then it rings and it's just a continuous ring. And he has to pick it up in order to turn it off. And he starts to talk to people on the other end of the line. And it turns out the people that he's talking to are the guy's former victims. And they're telling him what to expect and how to potentially avoid it. And it's just disturbing.
It's a short story. It's based on a short story by a guy named Joe Hill. I'm reading this right now. It's a New York Times bestseller.
Joe Hill is Stephen King's son.
Stephen King's son. That's interesting.
So apparently, that
sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right. That does sound right.
This IMDb says it's an adaptation of a short story by New York Times bestseller Joe Hill. So wait, so Stephen King's son wrote the story for this?
That's Joe Hill.
He writes. He's an author as well too.
No, I didn't know he wrote the. No, I didn't know he wrote.
Why didn't he name him Stephen Prince?
That's actually a really great question.
It's pretty good.
Gabe's gonna die on that, Joe Hill.
So it sounds great, and I think it comes out in January, Jake, to answer your question. January or early February.
I want to echo something because Lauren and I saw Sinister in a theater, and that was 10 years ago next year. I think it was 2012. I, to this day, cannot believe that was a major studio release. It might be, and I would go Shining overall. I might put this above Exorcist.
That's funny because I don't find The Shining scary.
Oh, The Shining messes me up. See, The Shining is scary because it's atmospheric, and I feel that disturbing nature. Sinister is atmospheric and brutal. And The Shining is brutal too. Don't get me wrong, but it's brutal in kind of in sporadically, I would argue, and it's more psychological. Sinister is just psychological, but also absolutely disgusting. Like to a point where like I actually felt like I needed a shower after it was over. Like for our audience out there listening, if you haven't seen it, it truly is one of the greatest scary horror films of all time. It's
hopefully
incredible.
They follow it up with the Black Phone. So I will check it out. Okay, let's get to Matrix 4. I'll tell you really quickly what happens in the trailer, and then people are criticizing it in the comments down below that it sounds like a rehash of Matrix 1.
Don't love the title, by the way. I'm tired of all the R's. Reloaded, Resurrections. What was the other one?
Wait, do you have a problem with all the Spider-Man homes?
No, I just feel like it. When I heard the title of The Matrix 4, I was like, wait, wasn't that the third title? Which was Revolutions.
Revolutions.
But I'm not gonna lie to you. When I heard the title was Resurrections, whatever it is, the first thought was, wait, wasn't that the third title? I totally, because Revolutions wasn't great. And I think Reloaded's a little underrated. It has one of the coolest highway chase scenes ever. But get away from the R stuff.
I like the R's, but then you can't. Then how come Spider-Man gets passed?
It's different. No Way Home, Homecoming, Far From Home. I feel like that they're like Revolutions, Resurrections, Reloaded. For some reason, it's almost too streamlined. No Way Home. Well, at least they have different. I don't know. There's different words. I don't know. Maybe it just feels different.
The footage definitely stands it apart from the existing Matrix films. It looks like it's shot differently. I need to go back and check and see who her cinematographer is going to be.
I'll double check it. Bill Pope shot the original 3, though, right?
I believe that's right.
Shang-Chi DP Bill Pope
looks totally different.
I'll check it out.
You're gonna say William Pope? How he's credited as William Pope in the credits for Shang-Chi?
Yeah,
It has, so Keanu, first and foremost, is in his John Wick long hair and beard, which I think is significant. He does not remember being in the Matrix or being Neo at the start of the footage. He's back to playing Thomas, the character that he was.
Mr.
He
Anderson.
encounters Carrie Ann Moss out in the real world, and the two of them have what feels like a cute meet, like a sort of romantic cute meet where they shake hands. Is that what it's called? Meet cute. And they shake hands, but kind of know that they've seen each other before. I want to call him Neo. Thomas is in therapy. Like Neil Patrick Harris is playing his therapist at the start of the clip. And he's saying, I have these dreams. They feel really real. I don't know what they are. And then he runs into a character who recruits him. Oh, and he's swallowing blue pills. He's constantly, it's like a montage of him sort of swallowing blue pills to get through the humdrumness of his day. Kind of like it does. As I describe the footage, I'm saying it does sound kind of similar to the first Matrix, because then Yahya Abdul-Mateen shows up and offers him the red pill. And,
does he offer him any candy?
No, he does not offer me candy.
Take the red or the blue candy. That would have been amazing.
That would have been a lot, with a hook on his hand. And then Keanu takes it and steps through a mirror, and then he's back in the Matrix. And then it's a montage of like all the action set pieces, and we'll wait and see how the rest of it pans out. But that's where we are.
No
Matrix
potential
4.
sighting of Hugo Weaving, correct?
None, but there are agents that we see, but none of them are Hugo Weaving.
All right, DP update. So by the way, Bill Pope, who shot the first Matrix film, the second Matrix film.
Could you go, wait guys, DP update.
DP update. I don't know.
Bill Pope's brilliant, by the way. And Sean, I know you're diving into your Spider-Man book. I mean, he shot obviously Raimi's films. He's one of the best DPs of all time. He's also Edgar.
He did 2, I think.
He did 2. He's also
2 and 3.
He's also Edgar Wright's DP. He shot Baby Driver. All right, the DP on The Matrix. You guys ready for this? Is John Tull.
Oh, I know that name.
Do you know what else he's done?
I don't think
Last Samurai, Braveheart, Thin Red Line, Cloud Atlas. He shot Iron Man 3. He shot Almost Famous.
Oh my God.
Dude has a sick resume.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
okay. All right. I'm all in. Good. And it looks really good. The footage looks fantastic. All right, let's shift to this week in movies, because we have some big titles that we want to get to, including, so there's a film coming to Netflix called Afterlife of the Party. None of us have seen it, so
no, this isn't meant to be like a joke. Is it a sequel to Life of the Party?
I don't think so. It's like Afterlife, like Ghostbusters Afterlife kind of thing. So it's probably like a
so one word.
Yeah, not after the life of the party.
Yeah,
it's Afterlife of the Party. That's it's stupid either way. But on Amazon Prime,
that doesn't get a pass on this show.
I want to give you guys the opportunity to talk about Cinderella, because you both are telling me that it's worth my time. Jakey, why don't you start?
I was very pleasantly surprised by this film, and we often talk about expectations. I will say that I am a sucker for jukebox musicals. I love musicals that use like modern day already established songs.
What are some examples of what you're talking about?
If you've ever seen, this isn't a great example because I don't love this show or this movie. Moulin Rouge. I was gonna say Mamma Mia.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All Shook Up. Like songs that you already know. And this movie, like they break out into Queen. At one point, they break out into
everyone loves Queen now.
To Madonna. At one point, they break out into there's an Ed Sheeran song. There's Jennifer Lopez song. There's a wide variations of music.
Shawn Mendes song.
I don't think there was a Shawn Mendes song in there.
Should be.
But I also, Kevin, I'm curious if you feel the same way. I really dug the humor. I thought it was very well written. I laughed out loud. Actually, it's got a very kind of like sarcastic, sort of smart ass kind of element to it. It's sort of a different retelling of the Cinderella legend, so much so that like the ending is completely different than any Cinderella ending we've ever gotten. And I was very pleasantly surprised. And I'm with Kevin. I don't know if we're gonna get raked across the coals for being like in. Like, because I already mentioned to a few people that I liked it, and their response was, really? Like, you and I went, yeah, like, I really liked it. Kevin, back me up, my man.
Well, this just goes to show you, like, what we think about a film prior to seeing it. And I think in terms of, like, there's so many Cinderella films. What's interesting about this film, by the way, I think this movie shot for 4 weeks, then it got shut down for the pandemic, and then they re-picked it up and finished it. The first 4 weeks of production were actually shot by Andrew Dunn, who shot Ever After, the Drew Barrymore Cinderella film from the 90s. So just kind of a little cool connection there. And Kate Cannon, who's the director of this movie, I think she was a big producer on 30 Rock, and but this movie surprised the heck out of me. And I think Jake would probably agree, like the movie kind of opens with this incredible narration by Billy Porter, who adds a phenomenal energy to the film we are about to see. Like, he opens the film up and you're just like, oh, this is what Cinderella is going to be like. And Jake was pointing out the idea of the differences this movie makes. It kind of rewrites the idea of a fairy tale and the way fairy tales have set up. If you're a kid watching a fairy tale film and you're watching a character and you're thinking about your own life, fairy tales back then were a little limited in terms of what they were saying to audiences, I would argue, and I think the cast would argue as well. And this film kind of like opens that up and kind of makes a lot of changes that are more in the modern era and modern time. Speaking of that, but cinematography wise and production design wise, once you're dropped into this world, they're like these crazy wonders. They're like showing you like the world you're in, like incredible production design, like massive in-camera shots, massive costumes, not a lot of CGI in terms of what you would normally think. There's CG and built in, but like it just felt like a gigantic production. And
how is she? I don't know her much at all. How is she?
Camila Cabello, she's
surprisingly
fantastic.
Yeah,
really,
like very good in the role. Yeah. Now, like what's interesting about the film, my favorite character in the film was actually Idina Menzel's character, who's the stepmother. But they really, really dive into more backstory on that character as to why she is the way she is. And it actually all makes sense. They do a good job with arcs in this movie, too, I thought. And Pierce Brosnan was great.
There's a line that I laughed out loud that I feel like, Sean, you would appreciate, because the Pierce Brosnan is the king and he wants his prince son to get married. And the prince is kind of pushing back. And he goes, what are we going to do? Like, get married and grow old into our 40s? What are we going to talk about? For some reason, I pictured you hearing that line and laughing. I don't know. It just made me laugh.
That's really funny.
It was surprisingly just really fun. And I don't know. Again, this all goes back to expectations that we were saying on the show earlier. Like, when you sit down for Cinderella, you're like, another Cinderella film. How is this going to be interesting? And it worked. And Shannon McIntosh produced it, by the way. And I want to give her a shout out because she produced obviously all these classic Quentin Tarantino's movies we've been watching over the past few years. We're going to try and get her on Real Blend to give that producer perspective at some point. But it really, if you think about that name, Shannon, and kind of the work that she's done, and she produced Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Hateful Eight, Kill Bill. It's pretty incredible. And then you do a Cinderella film, and to me, that just should show you that, while it's not a Tarantino film, the work that went into it from her perspective, it's all because they care about the experience. And like, to be there watching this at home, I wish I could see it theatrically. I do believe it has an 85 screen theatrical release.
Oh wow!
Really? For an Amazon?
Someone reconfirmed that, but I'm almost certain it's Amazon Prime Video on Friday. And then there's going to be about 80 plus theaters around the country who are going to show it theatrically. And Camila Cabello, I thought she was great in the role. Yeah, I thought she was a really good Cinderella. Even though it's not necessarily live singing, I think some pieces may be. It felt like it worked. It felt like you were immersed in it. And I didn't expect to spend this much time on production design and cinematography talking about a Cinderella film, but here we are. And
if you do that right,
it's a great soundtrack.
Yeah, if you do that right in a movie like this, it's supposed to be done right. It's supposed to go above and beyond. Yeah, in a movie like that, in a fairy tale.
But they care about it. When I watched the movie I watched, came from a place of caring for the audience's immersion. Yeah. Cool. It didn't feel like it was just thrown together for money purposes.
And then I know we'll move on. Tell me, like, when, because I didn't look up ahead of what songs were being used in the film, and there's a part where they go to a ball, and all of a sudden, like it looks like, sort of this big stuffy ball that we've seen in Cinderella 1,000 times, and all of a sudden the orchestra that they have starts going dun 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 dun, and whenever they start breaking into Seven Nation Army, I was like, oh my god, wait, at no point do you expect like everyone to do a Seven Nation Army dance in the middle of a Cinderella ball. It's very cool.
Also, song choices are really interesting because they work for both adults and for kids.
Sure.
That's what I want to say.
I don't have an exact number of theaters, but it is coming to theaters. It looks like there's one here.
Cool.
In my
Love
mind.
that.
So they're doing a limited theatrical run, which is really cool. I think this came out of Sony first. I want to say because Sony's on
that makes sense. Yes.
Sony's on the is on the billing like as it says like Sony and then it says Amazon Prime.
I remember when they sold that.
But this is a perfect example of a film that I think will do well on the platform.
I think
As
so
much
too.
as I think theatrically, I think people and families and kids, like if you're a 35-year-old mom and you have a 8 or 9-year-old kid, I'm just completely just guessing numbers. You're gonna hear music that you like, and then your kid's gonna hear music that you like, and then imagine that mom then talking to their child or their father talking to their child about the themes in this film versus like they rewrite a lot of the way fairy tales handle characters, especially it's very interesting. I thought it's very empowering. Yeah.
I want to see Worth because I missed it because I didn't get to do the junket. This is the Michael Keaton film, and the boys got Keaton for The Protégé first, and then they got him for Worth afterwards. Jakey, I'm always concerned about 9/11 films, that they can be overly melodramatic or mistreat the material. How does Worth do with it?
I actually like this movie quite a bit. It took a really interesting angle when it comes to 9/11, a story that I was unfamiliar with. And what it boils down to is that to keep there from being a massive lawsuit against the airlines by the families of the victims, the government wanted to get ahead of that potential lawsuit and go ahead and offer some sort of financial compensation to the families of all the victims of 9/11. But then it boils down to, well,
big question.
how much do you give someone? Like, what is the value of a life? How do you tell someone your husband is worth X number of dollars? And then it brings up a bigger question of, well, this person made a lot of money and their family depended on that more so than this guy did. So how do you tell someone that this guy over here, his family gets more? That dude's death is worth more than this woman's death.
Sure,
And
you
so-
can. It has to be a blanket.
But it was not.
That's the drama
Yeah,
of the
so-
movie. Yeah.
So Michael Keaton works for a firm, and he takes the job pro bono, and it is his job to come up with a formulaic equation that determines how much each family of each victim gets. And that's what it boils down. That's why it's called Worth. I was unfamiliar. This is a true story. I was unfamiliar with this story. I thought it was a really fascinating angle. Yes, it is a 9/11 movie, but it also it's more 9/11 adjacent, I would say. I was very interested in the story. I think because the story was so fascinating, I was in. I thought Michael Keaton did a really great job, and I thought it also handled it very well. I am not familiar enough with what really happened to say, oh, it handled that angle of the story well or not well. But based on the way, to me, they handled it in the last act versus and compared to the title cards where it says, hey, here are the facts of you need to know how it turned out. To me, the two went parallel and went fairly hand in hand. I really liked it quite a bit. It is streaming on Netflix, so I would say, it's not one where I have to say you have to pick up and go out to the theater and see it. I would say it's worth 2 hours of pressing play on the weekend. Kevin, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I have a very 9/11 films are really hard. I think for a lot of audiences, but I have a hard time watching them without thinking, was this necessary to do a movie about? Right.
Sure.
And I'm not speaking on Worth yet. I'm speaking on general, the idea of just doing a film that's 9/11 based.
Sure.
The only film that I really thought was brilliant in terms of a film that revolved around 9/11 was United 93. Because I thought Paul Greengrass told a story that needed to be told. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to 9/11, a lot of the focus is paid to the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, and obviously that makes sense in terms of like what happened in those moments. But I felt like there wasn't enough attention paid to United 93 and what happened on that flight. And for me, I got to learn so much about that story through Paul Greengrass's lens and him telling that story. So I walked away from United 93 with a different understanding of that storyline.
Sure.
And I felt like, and remember, if you guys remember, United 93, the families were involved in the process. I remember the actors would like meet with the family members and like talk about them, and it was a really, really special film. So to me, it brought to light a story that I don't think was talked about enough in terms of 9/11, which is exactly why I liked Worth. Again, what Jake just said is exactly why I liked Worth. I never thought about this part of the story. Like, what happens to the victims' families? What happens to compensation is an interesting thing because it's the last thing I would think about in terms of 9/11 and kind of like, but it is a thing they had to think about. And as the movie tells you, as Jake was saying, there's this potential lawsuit that's coming towards the airline industries that could essentially crash our economy was kind of the idea of it, right? Yeah. So to me, that's what I locked in. I'm like, I feel like I'm being told a story that I don't know a ton about, and I'm actually interested in learning this because I actually want to know how the families were treated. I want to know how they figured out that number. And I believe his character is a DC-based attorney, so that was a really interesting thing, obviously, here with the DC area with Michael Keaton. He's great in it. I mean, he's such a subtly great actor. I don't know if that terminology makes sense, but
it reminds me very much of like Keaton's in this phase where with Spotlight and this and
important
the
stories.
Founder. You know, he's getting these little character actor roles that have some modern history or contemporary history at least, and he fits right in. He's terrific in these parts.
And there's a really cool thing
in his career.
Like Keaton does this really cool thing in the film. His character, like when he really wants to concentrate, he puts a pair of headphones on and goes to his CD library and like listens to music while he's figuring out. He's trying to calm himself down and concentrate on because the moral question of this movie is what drives it. Is that concept of what is a person worth, right? And so like as you're watching this guy, the beauty of Keaton's performance is that he feels like the audience. The entire time he's like, how do I do this? And I keep thinking to myself, how is he going to do this? How do you actually figure this out? And he has a scene with Stanley Tucci. Jake, you remember this scene? They were kind of like I think they were at like a theater or a play or some type of musical or something. And there's a discussion that happens in that scene that kind of like makes you understand the questions that he's having. And I think the movie does a great job of making you feel that uncomfortable nature, but also you're learning something very important at the same time, something you may not have known before. So the job to me in terms of a 9/11 film, if they're making a film around 9/11, is it needs to do something that tells the audience a story that we might not know a ton about. And I think that's the real reason you make a movie like that, not for financial reasons. And I know the business we're in is financial, but to tell a story that enhances your thought process on the events of that day and kind of what people were going through. I never thought about the families in terms of compensation. It's just something that didn't hit my mind because there's so much going on in that day. So now I'm glad I know about it. To be honest with you, I'm actually glad I know the story.
So Worth is going to be on Netflix starting on Friday. It also stars Stanley Tucci and Amy Ryan, in case you need reason to tune in. In addition,
Amy
to
Ryan's a great actress, by the way.
Terrific. I
so
love
underrated.
her so much. But the big title that's hitting theaters and theaters exclusively, and I'm going to be extremely curious to see how this plays, is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. What's up, Jake?
I was going to ask you if I need to take my...
No spoilers.
There will be no spoilers,
Okay.
but if you want to go, unsullied, then sure. But there will be no spoilers for the audience at home.
I'd like to go Captain Phillips.
Okay.
You know what? Fuck this stuff.
All right, so I'm going to be one of the big cheerleaders for this movie because the second time, I bet that sounds so pretentious, but the second time I was able to see it before anyone's even gone once, it improved drastically for me. And this is what Kevin was talking about earlier, in that the theatrical experience that I saw Shang-Chi in the very first time was a press screening here in Charlotte, and the theater that they put us in was just awful. It was a smaller house in a 10 screen multiplex, and the screen was not as bright as you'd expect. The visuals were a little bit diminished. The sound was so low that the audio from Free Guy in the theater next door was bleeding into the multiplex, and so it was just distracting. Like I was enjoying the story, and I was invested in what was going on, but I was able to see it at CinemaCon because Disney ran it as part of their panel, and it was Dolby. and it was a better screen and just a better presentation, and it made me appreciate more everything that was going on with the mythology of Shang-Chi, to the point where, as Kevin said, I bumped my rating up by a full star. Like, that's significant. Like, if a director is hearing that, you know, a review might come along and take a full star off of their rating, like, that's a big deal, and they can't control how that gets presented, you know, in a press screening in some podunk market in the South. So I was really glad I got a chance to see it again. It falls into the trappings of some of the origin stories, you know, that Marvel has to go through. Essentially, there's a bunch of beats that has to go. But what I will say is that I seem to be in the minority. I'm turning off the chat because I can't pay attention to what Jake is playing some game with himself. I love the second half. Kev, I'm way more into what happens in the second half of the movie than I am the first half. I think the first half is kind of like a standard MCU sort of origin story. Second half is going to make a few big swings for the fences. And I really loved Simu Liu. I think that he's a terrific addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that the different places that the MCU can explore after the introduction of Shang-Chi is really exciting. There are 2 mid-credit sequences that you should definitely stay in your seats and watch, because they're going to suggest of where this is going. But this sets up for Eternals in a way, not that they're directly connected, but just that it's a new character and a new type of storytelling that I think Marvel is trying, and it worked to me extremely well. More so the second time, when I could better appreciate all of the action choreography and a lot of stuff that's taking place in the movie. But I thought it did a lot right, and just had a few trappings of like, oh, this is another MCU origin story.
Yeah, the movie is really fun. I want to point out a couple things. In today's action world, it's so easy for filmmakers to be in the middle of an action scene and just do quick cuts and just kind of hide the fact that there's no choreography being done there, that it's so easy to cover that up in editing. But I think audiences are smart enough now to know that when you're sitting in a continuous shot, that you're really more immersed in that world, because those edits start to mess with you a little bit, I would argue. So Bill Pope, who shot this film, you're sitting in a lot of the action. There's a fight scene on the bus in this movie that is one of my favorite fight scenes I've seen in a long time. Just the way that whole bus scene was choreographed. Gabe and I were talking about how there was almost a little bit of an old boy type of tracking shot in that particular scene. Simu Liu is unbelievable in the role. Like and the idea of how the role came about to him, but he's the emotional core of the movie tied in with the action. And then Awkwafina and his chemistry is so great. I loved every scene that they were in. The score is fantastic, and Destin does a really wonderful job of like blending this beautiful score that feels like it's from a different time. And then when we jump into modern day, and like, for example, you see Shang-Chi like doing push-ups, then kind of entering into the world that he's in. We jump into these like hip-hop tracks that are really awesome. And it's almost like a jarring jolt in terms of like where he is now and kind of where his character grew up. Mm-hmm. And to do that through score and soundtrack, it's all part of your subconscious viewing as an audience member. You know, to start off with a beautiful score and then jump into a soundtrack, it in your mind, it differentiates the worlds and kind of the world that he's living in now. Mm-hmm. I know it's a little bit of a deeper thing to bring up in terms of like a Marvel film, but I think there was a lot of decisions that were made in the score process and the music process and the filming process that are all subconsciously making you immersed into this world. And Michelle Yeoh is incredible in it. Tony, I don't want to botch his last name. Is it
Luang?
Okay. This performance is the best performance in the movie. He plays Shang-Chi's father, and he's kind of the through line in the whole movie. He's the one who starts the film.
Yeah, the movie starts with him.
Yeah, and there's a fight scene with him in the beginning that is one of the most outstanding fights I've seen probably since like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Just in terms of how gorgeous the cinematography is and the scope of the shot. It is just outstanding. And I mentioned Crouching Tiger, obviously, because Michelle Yeoh, who shows up later in the film, is in that film as well. And we'll get to her when we talk about our blend game for the week. But Michelle Yeoh, who shows up, I guess I would argue, in the second half of the movie or the third act of the movie, is great in the movie as well. This was just a surprise to me. I love Destin as a filmmaker. Obviously, Short Term 12, the Glass Castle with Brie Larson. I thought Just Mercy was fantastic.
Yep.
But what's beautiful about Destin as a filmmaker is that those films I just mentioned, the Short Term 12 and Just Mercy and the Glass Castle, those are very emotionally driven films. Not a ton of action is involved. It's very dialogue heavy. So what I think he did is he pulled from that. He pulled from that emotional core that you have in those films, threw it in here inside of a big Marvel action film. So the action actually feels more immersive because you're more emotionally connected to the characters because you have a good director directing good sequences of drama. And I think there's a lot of themes here that are really important. The idea of running from adulthood, accepting who you are, embracing who you are, embracing your family, not being embarrassed by who you are, being who you are altogether. There's like Tony has this great scene in the film where he's asking Awkwafina's character about what her Chinese name is. And it's like this very revealing moment about this concept of embracing your family and embracing who you are, but also unlocking your potential. I was astounded by how deep the film was.
I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think it gives you, because I think it gives you something that we've never seen in the MCU before. I think the action and the backstory is so different than almost anything else we've seen. Like, I know that like it's supposed to go to some places that are akin to like Wakanda, but I still felt that it managed to set itself apart from Black Panther as an origin story.
I saw a tweet that I don't know who said this, so I can't give them credit for it, but it actually was really perfectly said. It was like you're watching Shang-Chi and you almost forget you're watching a Marvel film, like kind of like what you're saying right now, and then a character like Wong will show up, which is in the trailers, not a spoiler. And then they connect it back, right? Yeah. So like all those things. So I do appreciate the fact that we can watch an origin film, almost forgetting that you're in the middle of a 24th or 25th MCU film, and then it ties in. Yeah. So like Destin was actually given a really cool, because Black Panther, still, as much as I love that movie, it still felt very tied to the Marvel world. I would argue, even though when you're in Wakanda, but it was still kind of based off of the events of what happened specifically in Civil War. So I think it still felt like it was tied. Shang-Chi almost feels like its own movie. Yeah, it just like happens to be tied to the MCU. And I think
Eternals is going to also. I think Eternals is going to feel very separate.
Yeah, so we love Shang-Chi. It's really, really well done, and Bill Pope shot the hell out of it. Very excited.
I called it top tier Marvel, and the people at Cinema Blend lost their minds. But I honestly stand by that.
Top tier Marvel. So top tier Marvel, I would argue it's right there. Now, your top tier is a really hard thing to deal with because you're talking about Infinity War, Civil War, Winter Soldier, Far From Home, Homecoming, Doctor Strange. I mean, like, those are my top tier Marvel films. Shang-Chi is right there. It's definitely not middle of the road. It's definitely not lower tier Marvel. It's like it's like kind of right up there with the top tier Marvel. It was surprising how. And also, you have to give it credit for being different. It's unlike any Marvel film you've ever seen. And I appreciate that Feige allows. You know, this is the last thing I'll say as we're wrapping up. This was like one of the few. We discussed this in the show a couple weeks ago. When a filmmaker's voice comes through a major film. Obviously, when Chris Nolan tells a story, we know it's Chris Nolan's voice. It's his story, right? It's his movie. Even though it's a $250 million budget, or whatever the film would be, you still feel Chris telling you the story. Chris Nolan. I don't call him Chris. But in terms of this movie, I felt Destin's voice the whole movie. That's really hard to do in a film this large, and like you could just tell it's coming from a place of love and family. And it's really important to him that he's telling this story. I would argue the same thing with Ryan Coogler. As you watch Black Panther, you know, it's his voice, it's his story, and so I think it's really important for Feige to give these directors the ability to have their voice in a story like this, and to have Destin make this movie. It feels personal, and it comes across a lot in the dialogue. And Tony, that performance, I don't want to botch his name, so I'm not going to say it. Best performance in the movie. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's terrific. I mean, I think Simu's fantastic, great. But Tony Leung is the drama, he's the tragedy, you know,
he's the core.
there's something significant that he's going through that is the anchor of the movie. Jake, you can join us back again. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on back in. Put your headpiece back in, you handsome man, for God's sakes. All right. So, and in the end, when Shang-Chi dies, it was the most sad moment of the film. Oh, and Jake's back now. Okay, let's get to the blend game. And we are playing Michelle Yeoh blend because she is a big part of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. By the way, can I shout out the actress who plays the mom as well? I think her name is Fala. She's the actress who plays. So at the beginning of the film, you meet Shang-Chi's mom and that's
father.
her? That's her?
And her name is Fala. I can't remember. Someone, I don't want to botch it, but she's great in the film, and she's also a major emotional part of the film as well. And I just wanted to shout her out because her and Tony had this crazy cool fight scene at the beginning, which I was really, really blown away by. And I hope people talk about her performance more. She plays the mom. She's amazing.
Excellent. So for Michelle Yeoh blend, so Kevin, you go first, and once you give your choice, maybe we might all be weighing in.
I mean, I just think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is the one I have to go with, and I think we all agree on that.
Same, yeah, have to.
We all do. I mean, first of all,
Jake, you picked that as well.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I'll since Jake wasn't part of Shang-Chi, I'll keep mine quick so Jake can weigh in more on that. I just think when I saw what Ang Lee did with that movie, I had never seen anything like that before. But the beauty of what Ang Lee does with Crouch Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and what then Michelle Yeoh brings to the table and Chow Yun-fat brings to the table as well, is this idea of while your visual and your action set pieces are absolutely insane, they don't work without great performers and good actors bringing the emotional drama to the story. So when you're in a fight scene in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it's visually amazing, but it's more visually amazing when you actually give a shit about the actual character that's doing the fights, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, to have these world-class actors like Michelle Yeoh playing in a film like that, it ups the level of why that film works so well. That movie came out 21 years ago, and I'm referencing it still while talking about Shang-Chi because the visual style of what Ang Lee did with Crouching Tiger, while I know that there are other films that have played with the visual style of the look of that movie, it was Ang Lee that brought that to my attention. Mm-hmm. Just that beautiful, like, flying and action scenes and just the way it was orchestrated. But then to actually, I mean, if you think about the director's job on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is really interesting to think about to me, because I'm reading this book by Sidney Lumet right now, just about all the details that go into a film before you shoot it, rehearsals and costumes and everything like that. But for a filmmaker to actually have the ability to tell a great story in the middle of all that unique action is really, really a testament to the actors that he chooses. Mm-hmm. And I just think Michelle Yeoh is outstanding in that film. I almost kind of went with Shang-Chi too, because I absolutely loved her in Shang-Chi. She's so good in this movie. But Crouching Tiger is my answer, primarily because she brought an emotional weight to just insane, beautiful action. And she's one of the best actors working today. And I'm actually honored that we're doing her in a blend game, because I think she's weirdly underrated in a very strange way. Even though she's accepted in the film community as a great actor, I don't think enough people talk about Michelle Yeoh. Mm-hmm. I think she just has a history that is astounding.
It's a legend.
So,
yeah,
legend. Absolute legend. So,
Jakey?
You guys take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of reiterating what Kevin said, for something like Crouching Tiger, it's easy for any actor with that kind of spectacle going on around them to get lost in it. Or even, I mean, you could make the argument to be made better by it. Like, I like their performance more because of everything they were doing. And I think it works backward for her. I think the spectacle is better because she's a part of it. And there aren't a lot of actors who can do that. Even like with something, Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. Like, Keanu is, I love him, but he is not like the greatest actor in the world, and I think he's really good about picking roles that suit him, and the spectacle of Matrix makes his performance as Neo better. It's the opposite with something like Crouching Tiger, like any other actress in that role, and they would have relied on the spectacle to be made better, as opposed to, like, she's kind of the crux of it, along with Chow Yun-fat, obviously.
Because you care. That's the thing.
100%.
You care.
Yeah.
It's not just cool. It's you care.
Yeah, the spectacle almost becomes secondary, and for a movie where the spectacle is as awe-inspiring as it is, to be secondary to a performance, I think says a lot. So to me, it was a fair. There was a moment where I thought, like, do I try to go with Crazy Rich Asians? Because she dominated in what is an incredible ensemble performance. She dominates just about everybody, but I could not. And within my heart, choose that over Crouching Tiger.
And you know what? The Crazy Rich Asians.
Jake. She's great in that movie, by the way.
The Crazy Rich Asians part is such a cliched, you know, the overprotective mom or the mom who's difficult to win over kind of thing.
Yeah.
But she puts such a great spin on it, you know, that it's memorable the way she plays it. The reason I have to go with Crouching Tiger is because that movie doesn't work if you put almost anyone else in her part, right? Like that's the defining thing of just, and I'd say the same about Chow Yun-fat, and I'd say the same about Zhang Jing. You know, those three made that movie. And when that movie came out, it's easy to forget that they weren't making movies that way. Like Ang Lee's movie inspired so many films that, you know, Jet Li's Hero and those are the films that became House of Flying Daggers, that became like these sort of knockoffs, or, you know, something trying to cling on to the coattails of what Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon managed to do. And it was just Ang Lee bringing over Asian films, or a style from Asian films, to American films, essentially. And those three actors are so brilliant in it. And again, it's Michelle Yeoh brings a central power in her individual performances, that when she gets into a fight scene, because she has to be in a couple of different fight sequences in it, you go along for the ride. Like, it's completely credible, and it doesn't take you out of it to say that, like, oh, she wouldn't fit in this style of fighting. And I think that a lot of the choreography and the graceful fighting, there's two different styles of fighting in Shang-Chi. Some of it's just a straight up Marvel, you know, brawl. And then there's some that's like this, that they physically do like an open hand. Like they take a fist and they open up the hand, and becomes more graceful. It becomes almost romantic.
Like
it's like a dance, exactly. And I think so much of that comes from Crouching Tiger, and the way that started this idea of like, it's almost a ballet, where people also just happen to get kicked in the chest, or, you know,
I would go to that ballet.
Thrown from a tree. Yes, right,
also,
exactly.
Gotta give a shout out, since you brought it back to Shang-Chi, and Gabe and I were geeking out about this. I think we were on video chat the other day. There's a bamboo fight scene in Shang-Chi that takes place on the side of a building that is, like, I would argue, it kind of like has a very,
it's it's like that. Is it Rush Hour 2? It's like the Rush Hour fight scene, only on steroids.
It's like the scaffolding in Rush Hour. Isn't it scaffolding?
But the way Destin and Bill Pope are like navigating you through that scene with the camera, like you're in these crazy cool oneers that are being stitched, obviously with the bamboo and stuff, but like you're there, man. And like, and then going back to what you're saying, Crouching Tiger, like Shang-Chi is better because of Crouching Tiger. Yeah. And the idea that Michelle Yeoh gets to be in both, and she's the emotional core kind of towards the third act of that movie, and she's wonderful. But all
right, so Michelle Garrist and Tristan Clark also weighed in with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Jorge Olivos went with Police Story 2, which I have not seen, and now I feel like I need to. I feel like the Police Story films...
it's Jackie Chan.
Yeah, the Police Story films are
Police
awesome.
Story movies are amazing.
Awesome.
I've only seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one.
You
I don't
actually
think
check
I've
them
seen
out.
them. Yeah?
They're awesome. Yeah, you would dig the Police Story movies, I think. Sean.
Okay, so for next week, you can reach out on Twitter using hashtag...
This is a cool Criterion collection if you're interested. This is they're both in here. I've never seen 2. I've only seen 1. One's amazing.
The only thing I know about Police Story is, wasn't there a stunt? Was it a motorcycle that lands on a train?
Well, I don't know about that one, but there's a stunt in Police Story, which is arguably one of the greatest stunts that Jackie Chan ever did. And I think Gabe knows what I'm referring to, but just watch the film. I don't want to ruin anything, but there's a story he tells about a stunt in that film where I think he almost died, which is not probably happened to him a few times in his career. But Police Story probably has one of the best action scenes I've ever seen Jackie Chan in, ever.
Next week, hashtag James Wan blend. So bring your hot takes for director James Wan, who has a movie coming out called Malignant. So I can tell you guys a little bit of behind the scenes stuff on it. Jackie, what?
I was just gonna say, like, have you guys, like, I haven't heard anything about a screening or a junket or anything for that.
I think I can say this. I think I can say this.
I'll confirm before I publish.
All right, so hashtag James Wan Blend, and you can send us your picks at realblend@cinemablend.com. And that is also where you can send us a review. And this week's review comes to us from Ray Perkin, who has followed us on social media and weighs in,
by the way.
weighs in often on some of our weird social media debates and likes to chime in. And he says in his official review, "Hi, Gabe, Sean, Jake, and Kevin, longtime listener, first-time reviewer. I've been trying to figure out what I should say in a review for quite some time, so here goes. I discovered Jake back in 2012 when he did his Dark Knight Rises interviews, and Kevin not long after, Man of Steel maybe, and instantly became fans of both and kept a close eye on my YouTube feed for their latest videos. When the concept of a Release the Snyder Cut book crossed my social media timeline, I was hooked and naturally followed Sean's social media footprint directly to the Real Blend podcast, which I have been obsessed with ever since. I've always been someone who has kept fairly busy between teaching, work, coaching sports, and various writing projects of my own, but I will gladly admit that the Real Blend podcast has become appointment viewing twice a week, including premium episodes for me. Through the pandemic shutdown last year, I was able to catch up on old episodes and stay connected with the new episodes, and now I make sure I carve out enough time on the episode release days to listen to them as soon as possible so I don't miss a single thing. I had created my own film blog a couple of years ago and had thought about venturing into podcasting, and thanks to your inspiration, I did just that. I haven't recorded anything in a while, but each week listening to you guys talk about movies makes me think, quote, I need to do one again soon. I love how I can agree and disagree with anything you guys can say, disagreeing with Kevin about Fast and the Furious, Sean about Lord of the Rings, and Jake about some of his Marvel takes, but then promptly agree with you about your Interstellar, Spider-Man, and Star Wars opinions. Your accessibility is pretty awesome too. Getting a like from Jake on something I have tweeted because he follows me always validates whatever I've tweeted, and getting the opportunity earlier this year to actually interview Sean via email for my movie blog is one of my favorite things I've ever written. Kevin and Gabe, it's all on you now. The open yet respectful honesty that you guys all possess is much needed, and it's great to hear 4 individuals who are as passionate, probably more passionate than I am about movies. Sorry for this long-winded review, but I just wanted to thank you for being a part of my weekly schedule every week, at least twice a week, and a special thank you for the premium episodes because the ridiculous things that Jake, Kevin, Gabe say, causing Sean to open up his belly laugh, is what brightens up my Mondays. Keep up the outstanding work. Keep making me laugh, shake my head, and high-five you all through the computer screen every week. The podcast means more to me than I think I can really understand or properly put into words. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything. Ray Perkin. That is a terrific...
Ray's a great follow.
Update, I followed Ray.
Yes.
And sent him a tweet. So now, Gabe... It's on you, brother.
It's all on you.
Come on, Gabe.
It's all on Gabe now.
All right, we're going to have a premium episode coming up on Monday. It is a This or That Star Wars edition. And Gabe has promised us it's going to be fun. Fun and not controversial. So we'll see how all that plays out, but he hasn't built it yet. So you can get your premium episodes at cinemablend.com/realblendpremium. And that only gets you the Monday episodes, 2 newsletters, and an ad-free experience with your Real Blend weekly show. So in the meantime, follow listeners on social media. You can follow us at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovach, and the show is at Real Blend. We'll be back next week with some more exciting guests, some huge movie news, and more puns. Kev, the puns are back, baby.
I'm very excited about them. I'm waiting for a good one to hit me, so... Get me
now remember, this is a Spielberg bit because we're trying to get Spielberg for West Side Story. So does everybody have their Spielberg movie?
I do.
All right, 3, 2, 1. E.T. and the extra. You both said duel.
Both said duel.
All right, I'm not going to top that. That's great. Well played. Well played. Nice job.
What a weird one for both of us to get at the same time. I love Duel, by the way.
Oh, Duel's great. I mean, you could honestly, you watch Duel and you go, oh, I see where Jaws came from.
Yeah.